GOP 2024 presidential hopeful and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie tells of some 19,000 Russian children abducted when the war broke out and kept in Moscow for brainwashing and disinformation, Ukrainian officials told him. As such, this film on two teenage Ukrainian girls fleeing Russia after a forcible kidnapping puts a face or faces on the dilemma Ukrainian parents bear to this day. And a ray of hope amidst the despair, as VOA's Anna Rice reports.
Настя Mitrofanova and Masha Sinchuk are taking an evening stroll through Washington. Some 7 months ago, the Ukrainian teens were detained in prison-like conditions in Khmelnytskyi city in the Kherson region, which was then occupied by Russian forces.
We thought we'd be in yet another basement, not knowing what was to follow.
The two girls are the subjects of the documentary film Escape from Russians, produced by the investigative journalism agency Следство.info. In late July, the film was presented to the U.S. Congress in Washington. The movie tells the story of the teens' 11 months in Russian custody. They were first forcibly taken to occupied Crimea, where they were held at a vocational institution, and, Sinchuk says, threatened for their pro-Ukrainian beliefs.
They summoned military police and threatened to sew our mouths shut with black thread if we voiced any support for Ukraine.
Thanks to volunteers and the investigation conducted by Следство.info, they managed to flee captivity and return to Ukraine.
We're coming, Ukraine!
The numbers vary, but Ukrainian officials say at least 16,000 Ukrainian children have been forcibly detained in Russia. Journalist Yulia Khimerik, who worked on the film, says international help is needed to bring them back to Ukraine.
When the system starts working, the Russians change it. That's why we didn't show details of the girls' rescue. We need help from volunteers and organizations that can do it instead of Ukrainians, because Russia doesn't work with Ukrainians.
The American politicians who attended the screening were moved by the girls' bravery and promised to help.
We'll be working with sanctions on the oligarchs, on the people who could be responsible for whatever is occurring. We will have every effort made to support international organizations, the Red Cross, others that can try to liberate the children.
Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur insists Russian authorities should be held responsible. But to do that, crimes must be documented, as they are in this film.
That a tribunal be established, and I think that it will be ultimately, probably at The Hague, in order to bring Russia to justice. And the names of children, the names of young people who have been abducted, who've been taken from their parents, in situations where parents have been killed, but then children were taken by Russia.
Before their abduction, the teens were studying to become chefs in Kherson. Today, they are telling their story to lawmakers in Washington, hoping to help other Ukrainians who are going through a similar ordeal. For Andrei Boris in Washington, Anna Rice, VOA News.